I used to think rules were made just so I could break them. And then one day, a man with the softest voice I had ever heard asked me a question in class and I forgot how to breathe. I was 20, arrogant and reckless, the kind of college student professors whispered about in staff lounges. I wore my rebellion like a second skin. Leather jacket in summer, late-night bar fights, skipping lectures just to prove I could. My parents had given up on me years ago, labeling me the disappointment, the screw-up, the kid who couldn't sit still without getting into trouble. And I liked it that way. Chaos made me feel alive. Until him, Professor Elias Hart. The first day I walked into his literature seminar, I was already planning my exit. I had no interest in poetry or essays or whatever dull, lifeless thing he was going to put on the syllabus. I had enrolled in the class because it fit my schedule and I thought I could coast by. But then he looked up from his book, glasses sliding down the bridge of his nose, and his eyes calm, steady, almost unbearably gentle landed on me. For reasons I still can't explain, I didn't walk out. "You're late," he said, voice smooth, almost amused, but without a trace of harshness. Professors usually barked at me, threatened to drop me from the course, demanded respect I never cared to give. But Elias Hart simply acknowledged my existence like he had been expecting me all along. Something shifted in me that day, though I didn't want to admit it. The next weeks blurred into something strange, something I didn't recognize. I started showing up to class on time. Me, the kid who used to laugh at attendance sheets. It wasn't because of the syllabus, which, honestly, still bored me at times, but because of him. The way he spoke about words like they were alive, breathing things. The way he paused when he read aloud, letting silence carry as much weight as sound. He treated every student as if their thoughts mattered, even mine, especially mine. I hated it. I hated how I craved his attention. Hated how my chest tightened whenever he leaned against the desk and asked, "What do you think, Caleb?" No one had ever asked me that like it meant something. At night, I tried to shake it off. I went to bars, kissed strangers, drank until the world blurred. But the more I fought it, the louder it became. His voice followed me home. His eyes stayed with me. I started writing down lines from his lectures on scraps of paper, slipping them into my jacket pocket as if they were secrets. One night, drunk and furious with myself, I crumpled all those papers and threw them out the window. The next morning, I dug through the trash to find them again. Pathetic. The first rail crack happened after class one afternoon. I had stayed behind, pretending to gather my things slowly while the room emptied. Elias was erasing notes from the board, humming softly under his breath. "You're wasting your time with me, you know?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I'm not one of those good students you can fix." He paused, marker in hand, then turned to look at me. No judgment, no disappointment, just calm. "Who said you need fixing?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever looked at me that way before, like I wasn't broken at all. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying those 5 words over and over. Weeks passed, and I found myself unraveling in ways I didn't expect. I started listening, really listening, in class. I stayed after to ask questions I didn't even know I had. Sometimes we ended up talking long after the others left, conversations that wandered from literature to music to childhood memories. I learned he loved jazz, though he couldn't play an instrument. He had grown up in Chicago, raised by a single mother who taught him resilience and kindness in equal measure. He laughed easily, but his eyes always carried something deeper, something I couldn't name. And then there were the silences, the kind where we just looked at each other, words unnecessary, the air between us thick with something unspoken. I was falling and it terrified me. But the world doesn't let people like me fall quietly. Rumors started swirling. A student saw us walking out of the library together one evening. Another whispered about how often I stayed behind after class. Soon the whispers turned to accusations, and suddenly, it wasn't just about me anymore. I was used to being the problem. But now, I was the weapon being used against him. The department called him in for questioning. Students snickered when I walked down the hall. And still, Elias never once treated me with anything but respect. He kept his distance in public, but his eyes always found mine, steady, unflinching, like he was telling me without words, "It's okay, we'll survive this." But I wasn't sure I would, because for the first time in my life I wanted to be better. For him. One night, I found myself outside his office door, hand raised, heart pounding. I shouldn't have been there. I knew what it would look like if anyone saw, but I couldn't stop myself. He opened the door before I even knocked, as if he had been waiting. "Caleb," he said softly. That was all it took. I broke. I told him everything, how I hated myself, how I never felt enough, how the world had already decided who I was before I even had a chance to choose, and how he, without even trying, had made me believe maybe I could be someone else. His eyes shone, but he didn't move closer. He just listened, giving me the space I had never been given before. When I finally fell silent, trembling, he spoke. "You're already someone else," he whispered. "You just don't see it yet." I wanted to kiss him then. God, I wanted to, but I didn't. Neither of us did. Because this wasn't just about desire. It was about something far more dangerous. It was about hope. And hope, I knew, could destroy us both. That was just the beginning. Hope is dangerous. That was the thought that clung to me like a shadow after that night in Elias's office. I walked back to my dorm, fists jammed into my pockets, the campus lights blurring in my vision. Every step felt like I was crossing some invisible line I could never return from. I had told him things I had never spoken aloud to anyone, not even to myself in the quietest hours of the night, and he hadn't flinched. He hadn't recoiled. He had listened. That was what scared me most. Because once someone really listens, you can never go back to being unheard. The days that followed were a strange dance. In class, Elias was as composed as ever, his tone measured, his gaze lingering on every student with equal weight. But sometimes, when no one else was looking, his eyes would catch mine for just a fraction of a second too long. And in that moment, everything else disappeared. I thought I was careful. I thought no one noticed. But rumors have a way of growing teeth. One afternoon, as I was walking out of the library with a stack of books I actually intended to read for once, I heard two voices behind me. "Did you see the way Hart looks at him?" a girl whispered. "Please, it's obvious," her friend snorted. "Caleb's totally using it to pass the class." Typical. I froze. My throat went dry, my hands gripping the books so tightly the edges dug into my palms. I wanted to turn around, to shout at them, to tell them they didn't know a damn thing. But instead, I kept walking, their laughter trailing behind me like a stain. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about me. Every glance, every conversation with Elias carried weight I had never considered. He had a career, a reputation. And I, the campus screw-up, the reckless one, was the easiest weapon anyone could use against him. The department's questioning became more pointed. I overheard fragments when I passed by the faculty office's words like boundaries and professional conduct. One evening, I saw Elias sitting alone in the campus cafe, his shoulders hunched, his hand rubbing the bridge of his nose as if the weight of the world pressed down on him. I almost walked away. I told myself it would be better if I did. But then, before I could stop myself, I slid into the chair across from him. He looked up, startled, then softened. "Caleb, you shouldn't." "I don't care." I cut him off. My voice shook, but I held his gaze. "I don't care what they say. They don't know you." His eyes darkened with something I couldn't read. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "This isn't about what they know. It's about what they can make people believe." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I wanted to reach across the table, to grab his hand, to promise him we'd figure it out together. But all I could do was sit there, staring at the man who had somehow become my entire world. That night, lying awake in my dorm, I thought about the irony of it all. I had spent years living like I didn't care about consequences, like nothing could touch me. And now, for the first time, I cared too much. I cared so much it hurt, because if they destroyed him, they'd destroy me too. The storm hit a week later. I was called into the dean's office. The secretary's expression as she handed me the summons was tight, almost pitying. My stomach twisted into knots as I walked down the hall, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the dean sat behind a polished oak desk, hands folded, eyes sharp. Elias was there too, standing stiffly by the window, his face unreadable. "Caleb," the dean began, her voice clipped, "we've received concerning reports about your relationship with Professor Hart." My mouth went dry. I glanced at Elias, But he didn't move, didn't even look at me. "There is no inappropriate relationship," he said firmly, his voice steady. "I have maintained professionalism at all times." The dean's gaze shifted to me. "And you, Mr. Rowe? Can you confirm this?" I felt like I was standing on a precipice. One wrong word and we both would fall. "Yes," I said, forcing the word past my lips. "He's done nothing wrong." The dean studied me for a long moment, as if weighing my soul. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. But understand this, both of you, perception matters as much as reality. Be cautious." The meeting ended, but the silence between Elias and me lingered like smoke. As we walked out into the hall, I finally whispered, "I'm sorry." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "Don't apologize for something you didn't do." But the distance in his eyes told me everything. He was pulling away, and he did. The days after that meeting were colder. In class, he no longer asked for my opinion. After lectures, he packed his things quickly, avoiding lingering conversations. Our stolen glances vanished, replaced by walls I couldn't climb. It was like watching the sun set and realizing it might never rise again. I tried to tell myself it was for the best, that keeping our distance was the only way to protect him. But my chest ached with every step I took away from him. Until one night when the ache became too much. I found myself outside his apartment. I didn't even know how I got there, just followed the streets until my feet carried me to his door. The building was quiet, warm light spilling from a window on the second floor. My hands shook as I raised them to knock. He opened the door in sweats and a t-shirt, surprise flashing across his face. "Caleb, I can't do this," I blurted out. "I can't pretend I don't," my voice cracked. "I can't pretend I don't care about you." For a moment he just stared at me. Then he stepped back, motioning me inside. The apartment was small but cozy, books stacked in neat piles, jazz playing softly from an old record player. "I shouldn't have let this happen," he murmured, closing the door. "I should have kept my distance." "But you didn't," I whispered. His eyes finally met mine, and the walls he had built crumbled all at once. The next moment, I was in his arms. It wasn't rushed, wasn't reckless like all the other nights I had spent with strangers. This was different. This was careful, reverent. Like every touch was a question and every kiss was an answer. I had never felt so seen, so wanted, so terrifyingly alive. When morning came, we lay tangled in sheets, the world outside hushed. I traced the curve of his jaw with my fingertips, memorizing him in the golden light. "We can't let them find out," he said quietly. "I know." But even as I said it, I knew secrets like ours don't stay hidden forever. The whispers grew louder. Professors side-eyed him in the hall. Students smirked at me when I walked into class. And still, I kept coming back to him, night after night, drawn like a moth to a flame I couldn't resist. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward someone, and I would burn for him if that's what it took. There's a saying that truth always finds a way out. I used to think that was just something people said when they got caught. But now, lying in Elias's bed while dawn crept through the curtains, I understood the weight of it. Secrets pressed against skin. They whispered in the dark. They begged to be revealed. And ours was growing too big to hide. The fallout began with a photograph. Someone had seen me leaving Elias's apartment one early morning, hood pulled low, hair messy, trying to look invisible. But no matter how hard you try, you can't make yourself disappear when someone wants to see you. By Monday, the photo was circulating in group chats and whispered across campus. Grainy, but clear enough. Me. His front door. The timestamp at the bottom corner, damning in its precision. By Wednesday, the dean called another meeting. This time it was worse. I sat outside the office while Elias went in first. The wooden chair beneath me felt like it might splinter from the tension in my body. Every second stretched into eternity, broken only by the muffled cadence of voices behind the door. When they finally called me in, the room felt colder than before. The dean's eyes were sharp, her hands folded neatly on the desk. Elias stood off to the side, his jaw tight, his shoulders rigid. "Mr. Rowe," the dean began, "a situation has arisen that we cannot ignore." She slid a printed copy of the photo across the desk. The paper trembled in my hands. "It isn't what it looks like," I said automatically. but my voice betrayed me too fast, too shaky. "We've received complaints," she continued, ignoring my protest. "Allegations of misconduct. If this is true, Professor Hart's position is compromised, and your academic record will be reviewed." My chest tightened. I looked at Elias, desperate, but he only shook his head slightly, warning me not to speak. "I'll handle this," he said, voice steady though his eyes flickered with pain. Handle it. That meant taking the fall. Something inside me snapped. "No," I said louder this time, my hands curled into fists. "This is on me." I went to him. I broke off, breathing hard, trying to find words that didn't sound like confessions. I needed help and he listened. That's all. He's done nothing wrong. The dean's eyes narrowed. "Are you admitting to a personal relationship outside of class?" Elias stepped forward quickly. "No, he's not. This conversation is over." The dean's lips pressed into a thin line. "Be very careful, both of you. The board is watching." We left the office in silence. Outside, the air was sharp with autumn chill. Students hurried past us, laughing, oblivious. My hands were shaking, and I shoved them into my jacket pockets. "You were going to take the blame," I said, my voice breaking. He didn't answer at first, just stared at the ground, his breath coming in heavy clouds. "I can't let you lose everything because of me," I whispered. Finally, he looked at me, eyes heavy with something deeper than sadness. "And I can't let you throw away your future for me." We stood there, torn between the world's weight and the gravity pulling us toward each other. And for the first time, I wondered if love was enough. The weeks that followed were agony. He kept his distance in public, and I played along even though it killed me. We became strangers in daylight, shadows passing in hallways, eyes trained forward to avoid suspicion. But at night, the walls came down. I'd slip into his apartment under the cover of darkness, and we'd hold each other like the world wasn't unraveling around us. Sometimes we talked for hours, voices hushed, hands entwined. Other times, silence said more than words could. Every touch was a risk. Every kiss was borrowed time. And yet, I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. Because with him, I wasn't the screw-up, the disappointment, the reckless kid everyone had given up on. I was just me. And for once, that felt like enough. But the storm only grew. The board launched an official investigation. Students were questioned. Faculty whispered. The air on campus was thick with speculation, and no matter how many times I told myself we'd survive it, doubt gnawed at me. One night, after another grueling day of whispers and stares, I collapsed onto Elias's couch, burying my face in my hands. "I can't do this anymore," I muttered. He sat beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "Caleb, they're going to ruin you," I said, my voice cracking. "And it's my fault." He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. You are not a mistake. You never were." Tears blurred my vision, hot and unrelenting. "Then why does it feel like everything I touch falls apart?" His hand cupped my face, gentle but firm. "Because you've never had someone fight for you. But I will." The words sank into me, deeper than I wanted them to. But behind them, I heard the echo of truth. He could fight, but he couldn't win this alone. And maybe, just maybe, the only way to save him was to let him go. The thought haunted me. It followed me into class, where I sat silently in the back, avoiding his gaze. It whispered to me in the library, where the weight of my textbooks felt heavier than it should. It screamed at me in the quiet hours of the night, when his arms around me felt like both salvation and damnation. Could love exist in hiding? Could it survive under scrutiny, under judgment, under threat? Or would it wither, crushed beneath the world's demand for sacrifice? The breaking point came sooner than I expected. A notice appeared on the bulletin board outside the dean's office. "Professor Elias Hart has been placed on temporary suspension pending review." My stomach dropped. The words blurred before my eyes, but the meaning was clear. They had decided. They were going after him. I stumbled outside, heart racing, vision swimming. Students whispered as I passed, their eyes following me like daggers. By the time I reached his apartment, I was shaking. He opened the door, and one look at his face told me he already knew. "They suspended you," I choked out. He nodded, his expression calm. but his eyes betrayed him tired, pained, resigned. "They'll make it permanent," I whispered. "Maybe," he said softly. "But we knew this was a risk." "No," my voice rose, desperate. "I won't let them take you down for me. I'll tell them it was all my fault, that I made it up, that—" "Stop." His voice was sharp, cutting through my spiral. "Do you really think I'd let you destroy yourself like that? Better me than you," I shouted, tears spilling. He stepped closer, gripping my arms, his voice breaking now too. "Don't you see? I don't care about the job. I care about you." The words hit me like a blow. My chest heaved, my body trembling. "But if I stay," I whispered, "they'll ruin you. And if you leave," he said, his forehead pressing against mine, "you'll ruin me anyway." The silence that followed was unbearable, because we both knew there might not be a way out of this. And yet, even as the world closed in around us, I couldn't let go. Not yet. Not when I finally found someone who saw me. Not when hope, dangerous and fragile, still burned between us. The notice of suspension spread across campus like wildfire. By the next morning, whispers weren't whispers anymore, they were accusations. Laughter, pity. I walked through the halls and felt the weight of every stare, every smirk, every cruel grin. I had been called many things in my life: reckless, broken, hopeless, but now I was something worse. I was the boy who ruined a good man. Couldn't let it stand. The board hearing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Elias didn't tell me the details, but I overheard enough. Faculty gathering, testimonies, recommendations. His career balanced on a thread, and the blade waiting to cut it was sharp. The night before, I sat in his apartment, knees pulled to my chest, unable to breathe under the silence. Elias sat across from me, glasses set aside, his eyes tired but steady. "You shouldn't come tomorrow," he said quietly. "You think I'll let them tear you apart while I sit on the sidelines?" I snapped. "Caleb, no." I cut him off, my voice breaking. "This isn't just your fight anymore. It's mine too." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The record player hummed low in the corner, spinning out a soft jazz melody. Finally, Elias crossed the room, kneeling in front of me. "If you do this," he whispered, "you'll be marked forever. They'll call you names. They'll brand you as trouble for the rest of your academic life." I met his gaze, my chest burning. "They already branded me long before you. At least this time, it'll be for something that matters." His hand slid against my cheek, gentle, trembling. He leaned in and kissed me like it was the last time. And maybe it was. The next day, the board hearing began in a cramped conference room. Professors lined one side of the table, their faces grave, guarded. The dean sat at the head, her hands folded like a judge. Elias sat across from them, composed but pale, a man waiting for the verdict that might erase his life's work. I wasn't supposed to be there. Students weren't allowed in these meetings. But I barged in anyway, heart pounding, ignoring the startled gasps. "This is about me too," I said, my voice louder than I thought it could be. "So you should hear me." The dean frowned. "Mr. Rowe, this isn't appropriate." "What's not appropriate?" I snapped. "Is destroying a man's life over lies and rumors." The room went silent. All eyes were on me, but I didn't falter. Couldn't. I told them everything, not about the nights, not about the touches, not about the way his lips felt against mine, but about the man. I told them how Elias never gave up on me when every other professor had. How he listened when no one else cared. How he treated me with respect when the world saw me as a lost cause. "You think he crossed a line?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "The only line he crossed was believing in me. And if you punish him for that, then you're not protecting this university. You're destroying the one person who actually makes it better." My throat burned. My hands shook. But I kept going. I was the screw-up, the rebel, the one everyone had already written off. He's the reason I'm still here. He's the reason I'm trying. If you fire him, you don't just ruin a professor's career. You ruin the only proof I've ever had that maybe I wasn't a waste after all. When I finished, the silence was deafening. Elias sat frozen, his eyes glistening, his jaw clenched. The professors shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another. The dean's face was unreadable, but her gaze lingered on me longer than anyone else's. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Thank you, Mr. Rowe. We'll deliberate." And just like that, it was over. The waiting nearly killed us. Hours crawled by like years. Elias and I sat on a bench outside, hands brushing together but never fully entwined. Every student who passed stared, some with pity, others with scorn. As the sun dipped lower, the dean emerged. She looked at Elias, then at me. "The board has decided," she said, her tone careful. "The evidence is inconclusive. Professor Hart will be reinstated with the condition that you, Mr. Rowe, transfer to another section immediately. No further contact." My stomach dropped. It was a compromise, a verdict that saved his career but severed us. I looked at Elias, but he was staring straight ahead, face blank. "Do you understand?" the dean asked. "Yes," Elias said quietly. And that was it. The following days were a blur. I withdrew from his class, packed my things, tried to move through campus like a ghost. Students still whispered, but I didn't care anymore. The only thing that mattered was the empty space where he used to be. We didn't meet at his apartment. We didn't walk together at night. We became strangers again, not by choice this time, but by decree. And it broke me. But sometimes, love isn't about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go, even when it feels like tearing yourself in half. Weeks passed. Winter set in, blanketing the campus in cold silence. I buried myself in work, determined not to waste the chance Elias had fought so hard to give me. But I never stopped thinking about him. Every book I opened carried his voice. Every line of poetry echoed the way he made words breathe. Every quiet moment reminded me of the gentleness I'd found in his arms. And then, one evening, as snow fell soft and heavy outside my window, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Elias standing there, bundled in a coat, his glasses fogged from the cold. My heart stopped. "You're not supposed to." "I know," he said, his breath clouding in the air. "But I had to see you." For a moment, I couldn't move. Then I pulled him inside, shutting the door against the world. He stood there, shaking snow from his hair, eyes searching mine. I've followed every rule they gave me. I've kept my distance. "But Caleb," his voice cracked, "I can't keep pretending you're not the most important thing that's ever happened to me." The tears came before I could stop them. I crossed the room, grabbed his face in my hands, and kissed him like I had been holding my breath for months. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was everything. We knew the risks. We knew the world would never make it easy for us. But as we stood there, holding on to each other while the snow fell quietly outside, I finally understood something Elias had been trying to teach me all along. Hope wasn't the enemy. Hope was the fight. Years later, I'd look back on that winter and realize it was the beginning, not the end. The path was messy, filled with obstacles, judgment, sacrifice. But we made it. We found a way to love in the cracks, in the silences, in the moments no one could take from us. And for a boy who once thought he was destined to ruin everything he touched, that was more than enough. It was everything. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.